Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Geoff Banks Bet. Join the excitement and sign up to Geoff Banks online now to get 10% off any net losses returned as cash after your first month of betting up to £500 at geoffbanks.bet. Great to have your company on the Final Furlong podcast, and great to have the company of one of our favourite guests on the show. Yes, it is almost time for the new National Hunt season, which means it's a Weatherby's special alongside Jumpers to Follow author and Cheltenham Festival betting guide author Paul Ferguson. Paul, welcome back to the Final Furlong.
It's good to be back. Certainly feels like it's autumn this morning in Liverpool anyway. It's a bit wet and windy over here and a bit cold, to be honest.
Feels that way in Ireland too, mate. Yesterday was a beautiful sunny day. I was building a greenhouse in the garden. Today we're sheltering from the storm. It's absolute insanity out there. But as much as there's still a lot of excitement to be had with the flat, which I know you can't wait for, the Breeders' Cup in particular. You're very excited about City of Troy and the Classic. Really, it's all about the National Hunt season. That's where the real engagement is, and that's where the fans really get going. And one of the most essential books that you have to have, not only the Weatherby's Cheltenham Festival betting guide, but Weatherby's Jumpers to Follow. It's an essential read. The information that Paul Ferguson had in his book last year and for the last couple of years has been chef's kiss. We've got a discount for you, as we always do. For loyal Final Furlong podcast listeners, your discount code is really catchy, rolls off the tongue. FFJTF2425. Why, Paul?
I'm assuming the guys in the office have just gone with Final Furlong Jumpers to Follow. So if you think about it, it's pretty straightforward, to be honest.
Final Furlong Jumpers to Follow 2024-2025. It's all lowercase. FFJTF2425. If you're watching on YouTube, it's on the screen for you anyway. Just go to weatherbyshop.co.uk. You get £3 off your purchase, whether it's the book, the digital edition, or the print and digital bundle, which is the best one to get because you get the best of both worlds. This is the only place you're going to get your £3 discount. FFJTF2425 at weatherbyshop.co.uk or weatherbyshop.ie. Paul, who do you have in the book this year? What can we look forward to?
Obviously, the majority of the book is all my own opinion, but we've increased actually the jockey section this year to go alongside the likes of Sean Bowen, Harry Skelton, Harry Cobden, John Joe Jr., Brian Hughes. We've got 3 new jockeys this year contributing for the first time, those being Keelan Woods, Kieran Gethens and Jack Tudor. So it's good to have them guys on board. There is a small section of the expert selection where there are other pundits and likes adding their horse to follow this year. Among those, again, we've got Racing TV's Jess Stafford, Don McLean, obviously well renowned over in Ireland and works well with us here at the Cheltenham Festival betting guide. So 90% of the book is mine. I said there is contribution from elsewhere. Say the jockey section has expanded this year, and in particular within no jockey section, I'd say the pages belonging to Harry Skelton and Harry Cobden are both pretty much like mini stable tours to the Skelton and Nicholls stables respectively. They've gone pretty detailed. I think they added about 30 horses each this year rather than the usual 10.
Gold. Get your copy now at weatherbyshop.co.uk or weatherbyshop.ie. FFJTF2425. It is out now, but I have not been given access to mine yet. So hopefully Justin at Weatherby's will have that sorted out for us. I could pretend to go, oh, Paul, it's amazing. It's incredible. I'm not doing that. That's not cool. We want to try and be as authentic as we possibly can be. We are going to look at novice chasers in this particular edition of the podcast. I have to preface this every year. We're going to use the ante-post betting for the Cheltenham Festival as a guide. We're not really talking about Cheltenham, but we kind of are. It's just this is the best prism to be able to understand which horses are going to go for where and speculate about where they might go. So with Geoff Banks Bet, which if you sign up to Geoff Banks now, and considering all the corporate bookmakers are constantly pestering you with affordability checks and taking away those bonuses they say they're going to give you, it is time to move. And it's time to go to geoffbanks.bet. You get up to £500 refunded as real money, 10% of your net losses back after your first month, up to £500. FFP 500 at Geoff Banks Bet, or geoffbanks.bet, I should say. He goes 7-2, Ballyburn for the Arkle. Sir Gino, a 5-1 shot. He missed Cheltenham, obviously, because, well, things were not going well for Nicky at the time. Firefox, an intriguing one at 8-1. Irish Point, 10s. Is he staying hurdling? Is he going chasing? Impaire Et Passe, 20s when we put them up at the end of the National Hunt season on the Final Furlong podcast. Now 10s and Mystical Power at 10-1 shot as well. This is with a view to the Arkle, and the most standout horse, a little bit like City of Troy on the flat, is obviously Ballyburn. So what are they going to do with him, Paul? In your expert opinion, is he going chasing, or are they going to try and do a dawn run, win a champion hurdle, and then win a Gold Cup?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed hurdling, to be honest. If the decision was down to me, I would go chasing with him. He's bred to be a 3-mile chaser, let alone a 2-mile, but we've seen last year, obviously, he's got plenty of pace. If he does go down the chase route, I would think, the novice chase route, I would think he possibly would end up in the Arkle. And it'd be a case of Willie going different routes with him and Impaire Et Passe. I'm sure they wouldn't be clashing come the spring. Perhaps earlier in the season they might do. I think you touched on Gino as well, really. There was 4 side a question mark next to them over whether they will go chasing or not. Ballyburn is obviously the most intriguing. Gino as well. Also, it did sound like it towards the end of last season as Nicky was leaning towards giving him another season over hurdles, with them only being 4/5, but physically he looks more of a chaser. Similar comments apply to Majborough, obviously won the Triumph hurdle, but you've got to factor in that neither of those horses will have a weight allowance, an age allowance. By the time you get to the spring, it's right in the earlier in the season. Obviously, it decreases as the season goes down, and it's slightly different over different trips. Like, I think Majborough probably wants stepping up and trip anyway, wherever he goes. I think he will go chasing. And Calaf de Bale would be another one. He wouldn't be up to that level at this stage, but in terms of a 4-year-old, I think the plan is for him to go chasing. I haven't seen him down at Paul's last week. Probably wouldn't be up to, as I say, up to this level if we're talking about the Arkle and things, but looking at him physically again and the way he jumped at first time out to Kempton, I think it would be safe to say that he should develop into a smart 2-mile novice chaser.
So this is from memory, because we're getting ready for Irish Champions Weekend and we're talking about the novice chasing division. And Willie Mullins is always subject to change, as Gavin Lynch eloquently pointed out on the show last month. You know, Gaelic Warrior was initially going for the Stairs Hurdle, then he was going for the Brown Advisory, and then, oh, look, he's ended up in the Arkle. So Willie Mullins just thinks out loud. But it seemed as though both sides, the owner and trainer, were very much of the opinion, no, we're going to keep him hurdling and it'll be a pretty quiet year because he needs to strengthen up into that frame. But you just said you think he'll go chasing.
Who are we talking about there? Sorry,
Majborough.
Oh, Majborough. I just got the impression that that's what he was saying towards the end of last season. I've had no contact with the yard or anything, so he has done it before with 4-year-olds we've seen. Going back a few years, Jack Adam, probably a good example.
Did it last year with Blood Destiny.
Blood Destiny, wasn't it? Yeah, last year. I say whether he does. He looked more of a stay-in, because I saw with Gino really, but in terms of them as juveniles, they looked like they had plenty of stamina, I thought. Obviously, despite having only raced over the minimum trip. But I thought Majborough to do what he did, stepping forward from the Dublin Racing Festival to the Triumph, I thought was pretty impressive. I thought it was quite notable that he wasn't asked to run again. It's unusual, really, that he didn't go to Punches Sanrath. I think that has a lot to do with his physical makeup and the fact that they were probably thinking more long term with him. So, as you see, if he does stay hurdling, he'd probably have a bit of a no man's land season, because again, I wouldn't necessarily see him as a champion hurdler. Also, would he just have a couple of small runs domestically and look for next season? That's why I just thought perhaps they would crack on and go chasing with him. The other option there would be send them to France for the, I think it's the I'm not going to try and pronounce these French names. The Renault Vivier, is it? The 4-year-old hurdle in the autumn, which is the
Renault Vivo.
Yeah, the Alain de Bray, don't they, early on, and it's that one in November time. So that would be an option. I think going over there would suit him over those style hurdles. Returning to France would certainly suit him. So that could be an option for him. In terms of, say, if he does go chase, wouldn't surprise me if by the second half of the season he was up to 2.5 miles though. At some stage, so Gino, say, he'd be the intriguing one. I think Nicky's got a decent team and novice chase prospects actually. Berico Lord obviously bottomed out in the champion hurdle, but he progressed by winning the Great Wood and the Betfair throughout the season. I think he probably want to want 2.5 later on. Whether he's back up to getting back into Grade 1 level, I suspect that he is, but he can probably build up through the season. earlier on, and I think he's quite an athletic type. He'd be one I'd be quite interested in as a novice chase prospect, to be honest.
Okay, who's that horse again?
Iberico Lord.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Beth Early ended up running the champion hurdle. He was supplemented, wasn't he?
And
whether that was
the horses were just running stinks. So,
but I think he's just the way he jumps, and he seems to relish soft ground. He's probably one through the winter months who Nicky would be looking to pick up a graded race or two with.
Yeah, he always looked like he'd be a horse who'd be better over fences as well. But absolutely, soft ground brings out the best in him. Just with Majborough, the races like the Boyne Hurdle are there for the taking. They're very valuable. And it just seems like that would be more the likely thing to do with him. Give him a season to strengthen up and then go chasing with him. And I just wonder if they regret going chasing with Blood Destiny. But we shall see. It seemed to me like they wanted to go softly with him. Sir Gino staying over hurdles is a fascinating one because you would imagine...
Well, he said he did mention after the entry that kind of hinted that he would stay, that he would go that way. But again, I think he'd struggle to make an impact in, well, obviously this side of the Irish, he'd probably be all right because there's the graded race, unless Willie does come over throughout the winter, there's probably races that he can be,
which he probably will, by the way.
Yeah, he probably will. Yeah. Otherwise, if you're actually strictly talking about Cheltenham and where he ends up, obviously the owners have got Stateman. I'd say probably reverting to, if he does stay over hurdles, the Aintree hurdle will probably be the ideal race for Sir Gino come the spring again. He didn't look short of stamina. I didn't think in his races he was kind of doing his best work late on in all his races so far. So again, in time, he'll probably want a bit further. If he does go chasing, he's definitely got the class to mix it, certainly this side of the Irish Sea anyway.
Oh, very much so. You could see him starting off in that 2 mile 3 hurdle at Ascot that Faugheen and Any Power won back in the day, and basically stay out of Constitution Hill's way early on, unless he's so impressive there that you let him run in the Christmas hurdle at Kempton. But then that's another question. What's going on with Constitution Hill, and is he going to be okay? But that's a conversation for another day.
That's one thing we don't need to worry about, isn't it, today?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
He's not going to be going novice chasing, is he?
We might very well talk about that on
this time last year.
Yeah, we might chat about that on next week's show. Ballyburn. So your thought process is Willie is going to try and emulate Don Run, win a champion hurdle winner.
I'm not sure. The thing is, he's got options in the champion hurdle division. Obviously, Stateman's rock solid. Lossiemouth is expected to drop in trip and take on the boys instead of sticking to the mares division this year. Hopefully, that will be the case. So he's got plenty of options in all divisions, hasn't he, Willie? Let's be frank.
I think it's because of those options that he won't do that. I think that there was a romantic idea at the end of the season that you try and they did talk about doing this before with Any Power, that she'd won a champion hurdle. Rich Ritchie was very, very committed to the idea of going chasing, and then for whatever reason, she never raced again after the entry hurdle.
I'd always be the view of if anyone, my opinion, if you've got a horse who's 6 and you think he's a chaser, go chasing.
Yeah.
Don't wait another year. Is my way of looking at it. So if they do see him potentially as a Gold Cup horse down the line, certainly need to relax a bit more as he grows up and matures. If he's going to get that kind of trip, don't see coming back in distance being a problem to him if he does go chasing. Or if he doesn't, there you go, he'll be down the champion head route. If he does go chasing, I would suspect that it'll possibly be him going the Arkle route and Impaire Et Passe maybe over an intermediate trip. You should say last year, arguably his best piece of form in terms of horse he beat, and probably strictly on the figures, was the Dublin Racing Festival over the minimum trip, where he beat Slade Steel. And even going back to Punchestown the year before, he had Slade Steel in behind again there when he won that bumper at Punchestown, and Dancing City finished second. So that wasn't a bad bit of form.
Is that right?
Yeah, wasn't bad, was it? I thought the Cheltenham race, the Bear and Bingham, I just thought it was a bit of a penalty kick for him, really. I think there was only 2 horses, wasn't it, outside of Willie's that took him on. He got his own way throughout the race, and it was a bit of a victory procession, really. It was impressive on the eye, but and then again he was a bit workmanlike at Punchestown, but you can be forgiven that at Punchestown. I think at the end of the season, I think you can always forgive that, certainly from a horse who's been to Cheltenham. For me, he probably would, if he does go chasing, I'd imagine he'd start over 2 miles. I think interesting, and obviously in Ireland, is that they've got rid of the Grade 1 at Christmas, haven't they? The 2 mile 1 race has gone, hasn't it?
Yeah, the Racing Post Novice Chase is gone.
Well,
it's not going to be a Grade 1 anymore anyway.
It's not. I don't even think it's there. I think they've got rid of it for a handicap hurdle or something. I don't think the Novice Chase is at the fixture anymore.
Well, that's in a way, it's a good thing because you've got that race in Limerick, which Faugheen won epically.
2-3, 2.5 normally.
It's 2-3 if I remember correctly. Yeah. So hopefully you'll draw more horses to that race. Although,
but like we haven't touched on. Probably should touch on. We'll move on to Slade Steel and
Firefox. Hold up! Wait a minute.
No, I'm grouping them at the minute. But those Irish 2 mile Novice Chases, that their primary target will now probably be Leopardstown in February for the Irish Arkle, and then after that decisions will be made, because you're always used to have the stepping stone of Leopardstown Christmas, then the Dublin Racing Festival. Now the first Grade 1 over 2 mile 1, obviously in Ireland, not 2 miles, is the Irish Arkle in February.
Yeah, that's a very good point to make. I do think the fact that Willie Mullins has been consistently sending horses to the UK throughout the summer, and obviously carpet bombed Britain with runners in his quest to be champion trainer, which in the end he ended up winning quite comfortably, just means that they're going to be taking full advantage of the British programme book. And it's a point that Katie Young made on the show last year. It's a point to make on the show again this year. Willie's slow to get into gear. Gordon will be fully revved up. Henry's horses will be kind of fully revved up. Gavin Cromwell's will definitely be fully revved up. They'll be ready to go at the Navan Festival of Racing and those kind of meetings. The Ferry House meeting, the Hatton's Grace meeting, they'll be all set there. Willie doesn't have a good record at those meetings, and Ballyburn got beaten first time up last season, and then turned out to be the absolute star. A lot
of them looked like they needed the run. I thought at the start of last season.
Flash edit. I don't know if that was done in a slick way by my producer. It may very well have been. Breaking news: Paul Ferguson's Jumpers to Follow has arrived. Not here, to the author himself. Show us a copy, please, for the YouTube viewers. Proper close up, Paul. That's just a tease. Give us there we go. Who's on the cover? Is that Elite Tomp?
Elite Tomp, yeah.
Nice.
Owned by our new sponsors. So yeah, had a good season last year, didn't he?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I'm looking forward to talking to you about him on next week's show, or it could be the week after. I'm not entirely sure, but is he a Cheltenham horse? Is he not a Cheltenham horse? Does he just need Town End for Cheltenham? We'll find out more about that in next week's show. To close off Ballyburn, though, before we move on, and this sort of brings in Impaire Et Passe as well, and it's just interesting how two of the best ratings agencies in the business, RPRs for Racing Post and Timeform, view things slightly differently. Impaire Et Passe got a 158 plus for his Bearing Bingham win. Ballyburn got a 157 plus from Timeform for the same race. But Ballyburn was rated the best winner of the Bearing Bingham / Gallagher / Neptune / Ballymore, whatever you want to call it. They rated him the best winner for the last 10 years. So where do you stand on just how impressive he was that day? Because we know what he did to Slade Steel at Leopardstown. His Cheltenham win, what did you make of that?
Yeah, as I say, it was. I was just disappointed with the race, to be honest, as a whole. Beforehand, no questions about his performance on the day. Visually, very impressive. Put the race to bed. I think he was always the winner going on. I don't think there was any moments worry really. But to say, he took on 4 stablemates and 2 from Britain who didn't really perform. So, in terms of actually what he beat, I'm not saying I question the form, but I wouldn't rate it as highly as his earlier form. I say, for me, his best performance was much the Dublin Racing Festival over the minimum trip. I think that 2.5 mile, 2 mile 5 suited him ideally because he's got that turn of foot as well as the stamina. And I think that's the key really, is pedigree is 3 mile plus chases. So if that brings about further improvement in time, but say if you just watch him race, he's quite keen and gets on with these in shorter pace, so he's going to need to relax and mature as he steps up in trip. And I say, wasn't overly impressed with him at Punchestown. Thought he was workmanlike, but again, I think at the end of a long season, most horses can be forgiven. Punchestown Festival, if not quite run up to their best, in my opinion.
So Willie Mullins is going to do Willie Mullins things. I hope they go chasing.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think anyone will know until he's entered or declared.
I don't think he'll know.
No, until he runs in a beginner's chase, then no one's going to know, and no one's going to be none the wiser, are they?
Well, I'll put it this way. I would be amazed if they ran him over hurdles and then at the last second decided, oh, you know what, we'll go chasing. I think if he's entered over hurdles, then he's staying hurdling.
Yeah, and you'll see if you have the early season races, if you have the early closing races, don't you? So if he, well, maybe that'd be an indicator if he's putting Hatton's Grace, for example, something like that. Might give you a pointer towards it, but yeah, certainly I say it'll be. Oh God, I wouldn't be rushing to back any horse at this stage. Like,
no. Well, certainly not at the prices that are available too. By the way,
exactly. Like so, he's not going to be He's not going to be much shorter, is he? After he's entered the run.
Oh, he will be.
People will be rushing to back him. Maybe after he's entered, not after he's won.
Oh, they'll cut him for if there's an update about the fact that he's just had a nice little stretch for himself and a lovely carrot. 3-1.
It's like I was doing them stable talk, like being around the stables recently, and people might see it on social media that when I go, we tend to get the trainers and jockeys if they're in, or senior staff to pick out the horses to follow. I think it wasn't long after Fergal said on the video to me that Dice Artinas will be going for the Greatwood Hurdle. She was only priced up by the sponsors, but she went from 6-1 to 7-2. I don't think it's not taking much, is it?
Come on! Like, this is just absolute insanity.
To win the Greatwood, like
that's
a couple of 2 or 3 months in advance, she'd be that price.
She'd be 5-1 at least on the day.
Oh, that's crazy! Like,
it's ridiculous. It really is. But the corporate bookmakers don't care. Like, they just don't, and it's any excuse. Like, in some ways, ante-post betting is dead, which is one of the reasons why it's frustrating to use these Cheltenham races as, and I think some of the prices that Geoff is quoting are very fair. A horse I'm going to talk about in a second, I think, is very, very fair. But any excuse, and the corporate bookmakers are cutting. I think they will go chasing with Ballyburn. I think they'll go Arkle. What do you think, in your mind, where do you think they will go once they go chasing? I think they'll mess between 2 mile 4 and 2 miles, but ultimately when it gets to Cheltenham, it will be the Arkle.
Yeah, I think he'd start over 2. Definitely. I think Impaire Et Passe is more. I don't know what's the word's important to him, but I think 2.5 is his optimum trip. That kind of trip for Impaire Et Passe. Now, last year they were saying about going stay as early. I don't think he wants that far myself. But he was impressive. He was impressive at Sandown, to be fair, after his gutsy win at Aintree. And he probably, I know, like it was a bit of a controversial finish at Aintree, but he got to the front like the best horse, and just idle for me really before the shenanigans took place. But I think an intermediate trip is what Impaire Et Passe really wants. I think he's got to turn a foot at an intermediate trip. So I would think if both of them are fit and well come the spring, I would imagine possibly Ballyburn 2 miles, Impaire Et Passe 2.5.
Yeah, copy paste. I completely agree with you. I think it worked out very well staying over hurdles. It did not work out well early in the season because of the high expectation there was for that horse. He'd been a very impressive winner of the Bearing Bingham. It looked as though he had the world at his feet. He was going to be the challenger to Constitution Hill. It wasn't State Man who was going to win the champion hurdle. Impaire Et Passe was the one who was going to do it, and it just didn't work out.
He said afterwards he was disappointed, but.
Yeah, but think about what happened. He was beaten by Tihupu, who went on to win the Stairs hurdle. He was beaten by State Man, who went on to win the champion hurdle. He was beaten by State Man and Bob Ollinger, who he reversed form with in the Aintree hurdle. And then he goes to Sandown and he wins again and confirms that his Aintree hurdle win was no fluke for all that he did.
Form wasn't what was probably still an upgrade on his novice form.
Absolutely, it was.
People just expect him to make this meteoric rise, which doesn't really happen when you go into open company. It's more difficult than people give credit for. And he say the way he travelled, he absolutely tanked through the Hatton's Grace last year. He'd done way too much and still only got outstayed in the closing stages by a good Stayers Hurdle winning horse late in the season. So I think his form from earlier in the campaign was really good and entitled him then to win. They probably done the right thing in missing Cheltenham.
Oh yeah. Absolutely they did. I think they made the right decision not going chasing with him because they now have a horse who's the same age as Ballyburn, but has the experience, the more additional experience that he might very well have needed. And he didn't have a hard race at the Cheltenham Festival either, which wouldn't have.
That was the difference. He was only 5 when he won the Ballymore or Neptune, whatever it was then.
Which is rare. That doesn't happen. I think it was 10 years since the last one to do it.
I think Pedaller's Cross might have been the last one before him. Or certainly, and the new one, I think, won at the age of 5 as well.
Stardom of Hazon was 5.
When he won that was when he won the RSA.
Oh, it was, wasn't it? Jeez.
Yeah, he's the last one. That's what you're talking about. That in terms of that's what you can't go going out with them 4-year-olds going chasing 5-year-olds since the allowance has gone. 5-year-olds in the Arkle and North from 16.
Is Well Chief the last 5-year-old to win the Arkle?
Yeah, or Voy por Ustedes. I don't know which way around they were. Voy por Ustedes, was it?
Voy por Ustedes was after Well Chief.
Was, yeah. And then the year after Voy por Ustedes, I think they took the weight allowance away. 2007, 2008, that time. The age allowance was removed. So it is difficult. I think the only one who's gone close recently, Fakir Du Reponet, was slightly unlucky, wasn't he, behind Put the Kettle On. But so it is difficult for them. People say it's difficult for them in open company over hurdles, but as the stats would show, it isn't easy for them in their first season of offences neither by the time we reach the spring and the allowances have gone.
So I think Impaire Et Passe will be trained for the Turners. I think you're absolutely right about him in terms of he probably would stay he'll definitely stay 3 miles over fences in time. I don't think it's what he's looking for right now. I don't really think he has the turn of foot to be winning. He could win a 2-mile chase in Ireland for sure, but a 2-mile Grade 1 Arkle, I don't think so. The Turners on the new course at Cheltenham, that's going to be ideal for him. So I would imagine that's the race he will be targeted at all season. I would imagine Ballyburn will be targeted for the Arkle. I'm sure someone watching this and listening to this is going, why wouldn't he go for the Brown Advisory? Why wouldn't he go 3 miles? They're not. I can't see them doing that with Ballyburn. Not yet, anyway. I just don't see them doing that. It'll be, they'll train him. If you're thinking of him for a champion hurdle now, then you're obviously thinking of the Arkle over fences. That's how my brain would work there. And then you still have time to up him in distance. The Arkle, before the Turners came around, used to be the trial for the Gold Cup, and a proven one at that. But Impaire Et Passe at 9-1 with Geoff Banks Bet, that's a bet in my mind. There's some fascinating horses to come through. Slade Steel, who we'll talk about in a second, is very interesting. Caldwell Potter, you were at Paul Nicholls the other day. Very, very interesting. Maybe he's ground dependent. But I think Impaire Et Passe, one of the reasons I was so bullish about Tihupu last year is because of the way he beat Impaire Et Passe in that Hatton's Grace. And I knew he'd be nice and fresh for Cheltenham. And then I got very lucky that the French horse came out. So they basically handed the race to us. But I think 9-1 about a Willie Mullins horse that you can be pretty certain is going to be going for that race. That's a very appealing bet for me with Geoff Banks Bet.
Fair. I wouldn't put you off. I think just before we move, are we going on to the 2.5 miles now? Are we?
We can, unless there's somebody else from the 2-mile division.
I just thought we should probably touch on Slade Steel and Firefox. Obviously, their form ties in very well. I think Slade Steel will make a cracking chaser. Firefox has got the physique to do it. And he obviously beat Ballyburn start last season, the race we touched upon when he had race fitness on side. He'd won a bumper, and he also had a bit of novice hurdle, maiden hurdle form experience from the previous season. He actually ran over hurdles, of course, before he went back to bumpers the previous season, Firefox. So I just wondered whether he might want a little bit further in time. Gordon spoke of him after Intu though and said he's a now 2-mile chaser, so I expect he will start over the minimum trip. Likewise, Slade Steel. His form when he did step up to 2.5, he had 2 Cheltenham Festival winners in behind in Stellar Story and Better Days Ahead when he scrambled home. But I think the fact that the hurdle was taken away negated that. I think he would have won more comfortably. He obviously won the Supreme, travelled really well at Punchestown when finishing behind Firefox. So again, I say there's not much really between them on the form. I don't think Slade Steel quite ran up to his Cheltenham form at Punchestown. Maybe the better ground over the sharper trip. I say in time, I suspect that he might want 2.5 miles, but it wouldn't surprise me if down this season the Irish Arkle and then onto the Arkle was the route. I think those two obviously warrant plenty of respect in the Grade 1 company. At a slightly lower level, we had a winner recently called Gorgeous Tom, also from the Henry de Romed Yard. He won the Punchestown Festival over hurdles. He won Louis Fitzgerald hurdle, that winners of one race. I thought he was quite impressive on his chase debut recently, and he wants genuinely good ground. So I wonder if the plan with him is he'll get another run into him soon, and then we might see him in an early season graded race somewhere, possibly even over at Cheltenham, before he steps up and trip. And I would imagine he would have a mid-season break and come back for the spring. That's gorgeous, Tom. And one who I saw last week, as you say, Paul's Rubode. I'd have him in a 2 mile division. Don't think he's an Arkle horse. He's probably one for Aintree come next spring, maybe. But he's set to go chasing, and he's the type, even though he's a flatbred, he's got the size and scope for it. And he is the type who Paul would win graded races with throughout the season. And I think if there's one race tailor-made for him, it will be the Wayward Lad Novices chase at Kempton over Christmas.
Ooh. Very impressive. And very, very useful information, as always, from Paul Ferguson. The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Geoff Banks Bet, where tradition meets cutting-edge technology, and with major flat racing festivals on the horizon and the new jump season about to kick off properly, it's time to leave behind the corporate bookmakers who don't value your loyalty. At this point, you've got to be fed up of their restrictions, endless affordability checks, and losing out on incentives just because you dare to win a bet. Geoff is the bookmaker fighting for your right to bet, giving you the freedom to enjoy British and Irish racing the way it should be, and you can watch all that racing on the Geoff Banks Bet app. So say goodbye to bookies who want you to lose your hard-earned money on their online casinos, and say yes to unbeatable odds and a bookmaker that truly values your custom, Geoff Banks Bet. Final Furlong podcast listeners who sign up to Geoff Banks online using the promo code FFP500 can get 10% of any net losses returned as cash after your first month of betting, up to £500. It's an offer you won't see anywhere else. Visit geoffbanks.bet today and enter promo code FFP500 and join the excitement. That's geoffbanks.bet using promo code FFP500, because your betting experience deserves more. There is one horse we haven't touched on potentially for the 2 mile division. Asian Master, who just had such a dramatic transformation. He was running in a 100 chase at Tipperary, being beaten as the 13-8 favourite, ends the season finishing 5th behind Mystical Power at Punchestown after finishing 4th behind Slade Steel in the Supreme Novice Hurdle, and a really impressive winner over Better-Days-Ahead, who would go on to win the Martin Pipe.
He was good that day, and of course he beat Jimmy the Soul first time out, who finished second in at Cheltenham behind Ballyburn. I thought he ran really well at Cheltenham. He was kept wide throughout, and obviously the thing is with him, no disrespect to his jockey, but he's always going to have his amateur jockey on board.
That's the problem.
And he doesn't get his claim in those Grade 1 races, so you're basically giving away £7 to your opposition right away. Again, I think he looks like he'd be given his experience as well, you'd expect him to improve for a fence. So again, I think maybe going up to 2.5 will help him this year. I thought that towards the end of last year after the Supreme. I think he held entries at Aintree as well as Punchestown, and I thought maybe 2.5 might have been the way to go with him. Again, he didn't perform, I didn't think, to the same level at Punchestown as he did at Cheltenham. So perhaps he'll start over 2, but I would think he might fall into the middle distance category at some stage.
Yeah, I've nothing against young Costello. He's the size of you and me put together. So, well done to him for being a jockey. It's incredible that he's able to do it, and he has 1 point to points. So, him jumping a fence won't be a problem. I just don't see him winning at Cheltenham. But Asian Master is a horse who could pop up in one of those valuable Grade 2, Grade 3s as a Willie Mullins second or even third string, and do one of his much better fancied stable companions. And I'd keep him in mind for one of those races throughout the season. Slade Steel, who we touched on, I can't wait to see him over a fence. He did us a massive favour by getting Cheltenham off to the perfect start in the Supreme Novice Hurdle. Everything came right from that day. The ground was ideal for him. The fact that Katie, George and I were so adamant, we were completely wrong about Fact to File. We were right he was going to win at Cheltenham. We were just wrong about the race. But we were absolutely right about Ballyburn. We ignored all the hype, all the nonsense. Oh, he's going to go Supreme. He was never going for the Supreme. And that was very, very clear, which meant Slade Steel could only go to one race, and that was the Supreme. And it worked out, dream scenario for us. Hopefully we'll be able to do more this year on the Final Furlong podcast and this season even. But very excited about him going over fences. Whatever Ballyburn does, he'll do the opposite. They will not take him on again because it's a pointless task. So if Ballyburn is going for the 2 mile races, Slade Steel,
imagine.
they're both going chasing, but Slade Steel will go to the races that Ballyburn doesn't, which also includes Cheltenham. So whichever, if Ballyburn's going for the Oracle, Slade Steel won't, which means he'll be, if you're looking at him purely from an ante-post perspective, then if you agree with me that he's going to go for the Oracle, Ballyburn, then that means Slade Steel will be going for the Turners. What do you think about trip for him?
For Slade Steel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he'll start at 2, and it wouldn't surprise me if he did stay there all year, especially 2-1 of the Irish Oracle. But I do think he outstayed them in the Supreme. He definitely outstayed Mystical Power, and possibly the sharper track on quicker ground probably wasn't ideal from a Punchestown. Again, for all, he ran well. He actually probably travelled like the best horse in Punchestown again. He come up loom there, like so. I'm really looking forward to seeing him go. I think in time he will want 2.5. Though I always thought at the start of last season he wanted 2.5. He wanted 2.5, and then he came back again, like Firefox. I think, as I say, Gordon stated after the entry, I think was quoted saying he is a 2 mile chaser. But I always thought he looked like he might want 2.5. It might help him. And I don't think you can judge him on that now. The Novice hurdle form from last year in the Lawless and Ace, wasn't it? When he disappointed, he travelled well, but that was at the time. People would say he didn't stay, but I think that was the time when Gordons were really struggling. And,
yeah,
I think
he had a number of horses that week that bummed out.
He certainly couldn't be conclusive on that evidence that he doesn't want the trip. But I expect both will start off 2 miles. I think the novice chase divisions at all distances look really deep in Ireland. We barely touched on in the pockets. Obviously ran once last year. I'd imagine he's going to be fit for a full season because there was talk of him coming back in the spring. I know we didn't see him, but it obviously wasn't like serious enough to they were still considering running at one stage. Brighterdaysahead, we'll probably come on to in a minute. She's set to go chasing. Not necessarily, she doesn't have to stay against mares, I don't think. I think she's good enough, as she showed that she'd take on the boys. And then when we step up to the 3 miles after, you've got the likes of Dancing City, High Class Hero, Better Days Ahead, Stellar Story, we all took each other on a Punchestown. So there's definite depth in all divisions at the top level in Ireland in the novice chasers this year.
I've got one more to ask you about.
Go on.
And we'll give some love to the British, shall we? As we talk about this Irish horse, that Irish horse. Oh, this Irish horse is going to...
Yeah.
Jeriko Du Reponet. So you've been to Seven Barrows. Now that Camilla Henderson's a good friend of the show. Jeriko Du Reponet was hugely exciting last season. And obviously he beat Lump Sum, who then goes on to bolt up in a Grade 2 at Kempton. And was sent off a 9-1 shot at Aintree where things didn't quite work out for him. What was the talk about him?
I haven't actually been there this year, but I would say he's got prospects of developing into a really smart chaser. I'd agree with that. I think he'll put a line through his Cheltenham run as you can with many and Nicky's.
Oh, just forget it.
The fact that we
completely forget it
again. Yeah, I don't even think he was entered at Aintree, so I think he was pretty much written off straight away. As you say, Lump Sum and even the second, Fiercely Proud, they franked that form and filling the same place in a Dovecot shortly after. I think his form is a level below the horses we've spoken about, who fought out the finish in the Grade 1s in the spring. But he was good in his point-to-point. He beat a first horse in the other Mozzie that day. He jumped well. He's got the size and scope, as you say. He's still only 5. He's only rated 135 now, so... whether he'd even have the possibility of running a novice handicap to begin with, that would be an option for. I say he's got plenty of options. I think Nicky in the division, he's got Jeriko Du Reponet, Django Bay, who won the Grade 1 at Aintree on Boxing Day. I'd imagine he'll be 2.5 miles. Peaky Boy goes chasing. He won at Cheltenham twice. I wasn't overly taken with him on New Year's Day, and then he came back and won at the April meeting really well, I thought. He'd be one for the staying division. So, yeah, I think Nicky's got plenty of ammunition for the novice chase division too.
He's a horse that could just be completely forgotten about.
Jeriko Du Reponet.
And he shouldn't be. He absolutely should not be. He was a massive drifter on the day at Cheltenham, and also just Nicky's horses were done. They just were done. He had to run them. You had to try. You don't know what's going to happen until they're on the track, and Lucia ran an absolute blinder in the Champion Hurdle, for example. Like, they're not machines, they can't tell you.
Yeah, she ran well in the Champion Hurdle, and Iberico Lord
Completely bombed out. Yeah, and he'd been supplemented, so you would have been thinking, well, Berko Lord is the one who's going to do it. But he was a wildly impressive winner of his point-to-point.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Chasing should really suit him. Ignore that supreme run. He's better than that. And Nicky Henderson's got an incredible record in the Arkle. That's not a horse that should be underestimated at all. But he is being by Geoff Banks. 33-1 for the Arkle. And I can't imagine him going for any race other than that. So that's a...
He'd have to say race London 35 at the minute. He'd have to...
Oh, he needs to improve.
Pick that up a good bit. But he could, but as you say, if he goes and wins impressively first time out, and then he'd be in graded company soon after. So,
if he wins his maiden, which he should do, then he's what, tens instantly, because it's Nicky Henderson, and you're getting 33-1 about him now. I think that's a play.
What price was he after he won his maiden hurdle last year with the Supreme? He was pretty short then.
He was 3-1 for the Supreme with one firm. He won a maiden hurdle and he was cut to 3-1 by a bookmaker who sponsors Nicky Henderson. Absolutely ridiculous. Caldwell Potter. So I noted with interest you were talking to the stable staff at Paul Nicholls' yard and getting their horses to follow, and none of them mentioned the most expensive horse in training, at least bought publicly. Because there's
actually Regent Stroll is the most expensive when you do the exchange rate.
Oh, come off the stage, man!
It's actually official. He topped Caldwell Potter. Yeah, well, £660 is worth more than 700 and something euros, isn't it? So
wasn't it 800?
Yeah, okay, point. 740.
Wasn't it? Was it not?
I think he is actually Regent Stroll is actually officially the highest sale price because of the conversion rates on the day.
Oh, you're right. It was 740,000 euro.
He looked. He's definitely going chasing Caldwell Potter. I think Paul's posted pictures on the school already. I seen him on Thursday. He wasn't doing a whole lot, to be fair. They're just him building up really at the minute. But yeah, he looked well. He'd say he goes chasing. He definitely wants to. He'd only been winning over the minimum trip, hadn't he, in Ireland? I thought he wanted 2.5, and he obviously was going to skip Cheltenham, and he was going to go for the 2.5 at Aintree, which Brighterdaysahead won. Obviously his half sister. Would have been good if they took each other on. I think he'll be 2.5 this year, whether he's ground dependent. It was interesting when I interviewed Harry for the book. Harry Cobden, he's obviously never sat on him in a race, but he said that from the field he'd give him a home. He wouldn't give him the feel that he needs that heavy ground. He doesn't move like a horse who wants the ground, so I thought that was quite important. I would imagine races, you'd see him maybe something like the Scilly Isles would be the ideal mid-season target for him at Sandown, 2.5 miles, soft ground. Paul has a good record in it. But yeah, I'd imagine he'll just want to get him on track, win a race, and then he's obviously he's going to have Captain Teague as well. He's got a good bunch of novice chasers, so those two are going to be kept apart. So I would imagine Captain Teague will start over 2.5. He might want 3 in time. He might be one Christmas time. He could go for the Corto Star, the old Feltham, if he's won first time out. So they'd definitely be an interesting pair from Paul's. A couple of others who I've seen in recent weeks.
Just very briefly on Caldwell Potter,
yeah.
Like it was disappointing he missed out on that Grade 1 at Aintree. It would have been fascinating to see him clash with his former stable companion Brighterdaysahead and see how he would have fired that day. I'm not saying he would have won, but it just would have been cool to see him make his debut. The form of that Grade 1 just didn't work out. It didn't work out at all. Now, he was visually very impressive on the day. Predator's Gold was kicked into touch by Ballyburn. The Cheltenham down memory lane hasn't been seen since. Facile Mode has been quite underwhelming. Absurd does come out and win the county hurdle, but he pulled up that day along with Daddy Longlegs. He can't take those runs seriously.
He did beat Gorgeous Tom and his maiden hurdle, that horse who I mentioned earlier, who's already come out, but he probably wouldn't have wanted the ground like Caldwell Potter did that day. But I think he's a fair enough yardstick. Like you say, he went on and won at Punchestown Festival, disappointing in the Galway hurdle, but I think the Galway hurdle was a little bit unsatisfactory, to be honest, the way the start of that race was.
It's a complete shambles.
He was back last week at Wexford, that Gorgeous Tom, from 9 to 4 to 4 to 5 against previous winners when we're making a winning chase debut. So I think he's a fair yardstick, but as I say, I think he's more ground dependent. So it'll be interesting to see if Caldwell Potter does actually need that heavy ground.
So I obviously very much appreciate everything that Harry Cobden was saying there, and that's all fascinating. I suspect that Caldwell Potter is going to mop up some races early in the season, but by the time he gets to Cheltenham, I don't know. Unless it's a bog, I'm not so sure. I think that there'll be a Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott type, like a Firefox for Gordon, a Brighterdaysahead, and Impaire Et Passe. I think will crush him.
Could well be. And again, I'd say Captain Teague, there'll be graded races for him earlier in the season. I think maybe if he's got a win or two on the board, I think maybe Christmas time at Kempton would suit him going up to 3 miles. He looked obviously again, he disappointed in the Albert Bartlett, but having won over 2.5, he obviously won the Persian War. He was beaten at Cheltenham in the Hyde, and then he won at Newbury in the Challow, given Paul, I think that was his 4th straight win in the Challow.
Yeah.
And he looked all the time to me like he wanted 3 miles on a fence. So I'd imagine he'll have a run over 2.5, and then possibly the Feltham at Kempton over Christmas will be the race for him.
I just proceed with caution with both of those horses. By the way, I think Captain Teague's a nice horse as well, but I think he's early season Cado Star novice chase type. Almost once you're past there, take him out of the tracker and forget about him. That's just how I see things right now. Anybody else to mention in the 2.5 mile division?
Yeah, I think Gidley Park and Jukebox Man will come back in trip to begin with. As I've seen them both recently, and both Harry Fry and Ben Paulin were talking about coming back in distance. They actually obviously clashed in a bumper at Chepstow in March 2023. Gidley Park won by 6 lengths. He looked really good on his first couple of starts over hurdles last year. I still thought he looked mentally and just an immature horse. But I was actually the first time I seen him. I seen him last Wednesday. It was the first time I've seen him in the flesh. I wasn't able to get to Trials Day last year, and I wasn't there on Gold Cup Day. I'd come home. Physically, he looks all over a chase, and if he can just settle down a bit, and I think Harry felt he probably ran him in the wrong race. If he knew the ground was going to be as soft as it was, he'd have taken on Ballyburn over 2.5 instead of going for the Albert Bartlett. I think quite keen going. I think he'll come back to 2.5, maybe even 2.1, somewhere like Exeter to begin with. I'd say the 2.5 mile at Newbury's Winter Carnival would be the ideal target for him second time out. If he's won first time, Gidley Park. Again, the Jukebox Man, again, he's quite a free going sort, and I think allowing him to bowl along from the front, I think they're quite similar types, to be honest. I think would suit him well. He won a point to point, obviously. Gidley Park didn't run a nice point to point, but the Jukebox Man beat Cletus Poulor in his point to point. He does love the mud. He one who relishes it. Unlucky, really, to get collared, I thought, after idling a little bit at Cheltenham and the Albert Bartlett. And probably just set things up for Danton City in the Sefton and Aintree. But again, dropping back to 2.5 miles, I think allowing him to stride on a gallop and track. Again, gallop and track, I think, is important to Gidley Park as well. So expect to see them too at the likes of Newbury. Even maybe Foss again for the Jukebox Man. He's unbeaten. He won a bumper and 2 novice hurdles there last season. So that kind of track where they can just get on with things from the front. I'd expect those two to make up into smart novice chasers. And maybe by the end of the season, they'll be back up to 3 miles. But to begin with, I'd have them in that intermediate bracket.
This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp Therapy Online. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day or therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you've no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. If you've ever been in therapy, then like me, you know how beneficial it can be. But it's not just for those who've experienced major trauma. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and setting boundaries. Therapy empowers you to be the best version of yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a registered therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. With almost 5,000 therapists in the UK already, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise. Visit betterhelp.com/Furlong today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/furlong. This is a paid advertisement by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at BetterHelp.com/furlong to get 10% off your first month and get on your way to being your best self. I'm going to take a wild guess and say the Brighter Days Ahead will start her chasing career at Fairy House. I'd imagine it'll be around then, the Hatton's Grace meeting. Certainly in and around that time is what they seemed to be intimating, that's where they're going to go with her.
Yeah. Unless he goes to Down Royal and takes on the boys.
Well, that's a good shout, Paul. That's a real good shout. It might be that too. She just wins the Mare's Chase though, doesn't she?
She could do, yeah. She's good, isn't she? I actually don't think the Mersey worked out particularly. I didn't think it. I thought it fell apart a little bit, but you can't crab her for that, obviously. Caldwell Potter was the race he was an on-runner in. She beat them easily on the day. I wouldn't be afraid to take on the boys with them. I think an intermediate trip is probably what she wants. The other mare I thought I just had marked down. I'm going to butcher her name now. The JP owned Bioluminescence.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. I'd imagine she should make up into a nice chase. I would have thought she was really good in her point to point. I know she disappointed at the end of the season in Grade 1 behind Jade Grucci, but earlier she'd looked quite promising. I think she might be one to note against her own sex over fences. If Brighterdaysahead does stick to mares novice chases, and there's a good programme in Ireland, them graded novice races early in the season, she's obviously going to be difficult to beat. Come the spring, would they enter her in both the Turners and the mares chase? I would imagine she'd go for the mares chase, probably, wouldn't she? So.
Well, I don't know why. I don't know why you're going to go chasing and then decide, oh, actually, let's go for a harder race. It's there. Really. It's there. It's to be won. I mean, look, I know that I'm sure there are people who will complain and go, oh, you've got to be running. Look at Willie Mullins running Lossiemouth in the Mare's Hurdle. They do it. They go for the race that's going to be the easiest to win.
Yeah.
And with all due respect, like Limerick Lace, yeah, nice horse. She was good last year. Impervious, if she comes back to her best, she'd be deadly, but I don't like horses coming back after an injury when they're 11-2. I just think 3-1, it makes sense that's the race they'll go for. She'll stay. If she jumps well, she probably wins. I'm not saying she's a bet, but she might be one to put into double, treble, something to keep you warm over the winter, I'd imagine.
Forced to follow competitions, she should rack up a few.
Oh, yeah.
If you do any 10 to
absolutely.
I'd imagine she'd be... I say if they keep her to her own sex, she'll be hard to beat wherever she goes.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if I start talking about Allegoria Devassi for the Mare's Chase again, smack me right in the face, or throw cold water in my face would be easier. God, I need to move on from that horse. The 3 Mile Stairs. So Dancing City, he's going to go chasing. He ran a mighty race at Cheltenham. He was real good at Aintree. He's a very, very talented horse. Multiple graded winner now at this point.
I just think he showed his constitution last year because he'd won at the Dublin Race Festival. You liked him that day as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, put him up. Yeah,
he did. He finished. I thought he was slightly disappointing. I thought in the Albert Bartlett, but he was good at Aintree. I just think that slightly sharper test at both Aintree and Punchestown suited him. He was able to travel in behind the pace because I don't think he's a slogger. I think he'd be more than able to win. I imagine he'll win a beginner's chase over 2.5 to begin with, before going back up to 3. And even though he'd been to Dublin Race Festival, he'd been to Cheltenham, Aintree, he was still able to beat horses to beat the best of the others at Punchestown. And I know the winning margin was only short in the end, but he travelled like the best horse. And it's not easy to go to Cheltenham and Aintree and Punchestown, especially over 3 miles. So all credit to him there. I think that race will work out really well going forward this season as in the Novice Chase division. High Class Hero bounced back that day and ran well. Better Days Ahead and Stella Story had obviously both won on Gold Cup Day. Stella Story looks an out stayer, doesn't he? I think he just outstayed the Jukebox Man at Cheltenham. Imagine him on soft ground in the National Unchase would probably be the route he might go. Quai De Bourbon would be another one maybe for Willie in the Stairs division, stepping up. He hasn't been tested at that level yet. He was obviously kept at a bit of a lower level when he went to Ayr and won at the end of the season, but I imagine again he's probably a chasing type. And I say there's plenty of depth in each of the divisions in Ireland in terms of distance wise, and think it could be hard for the Brits by the time we get to Cheltenham for the Novice chasers.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Quai De Bourbon. I think it will be difficult for the Brits, quite frankly, but that's just because you don't have the horses right now. I suspect that will change in the not too distant future. You might end up with a whole crop of very, very talented novice hurdlers, for example. But look at that Martin Pipe. Better Days Ahead, bred by Emma Nagel. Shout out to Emma. Beats Waterford Whispers, who was gambled on as though defeat was out of the question.
Yeah, and he's another one who should probably be noted, because
very much so.
Whether he's up to that level, but geez, he tanked through that race, didn't he? And he didn't perform them at Punchestown last time for whatever reason. But again, he was gambled on them.
I really don't care about Punchestown form. I think if you do it, great, that's fantastic. If you get beaten there, I don't hold that against a horse at all.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. You're happy to give them a chance. He's only rated 135. It could be that if he's thrown in against all these Grade 1 horses earlier in the season, he could be again one for one of the better handicaps come later in the season, if he's really tested throughout. But I thought given the progression he only made his racecourse debut, didn't he, in April of last year at Fairy House. He only won his maiden hurdle last October. So he made giant strides in the space of 3 or 4 runs, really. So I think he's open to any amount of improvement. As we said before, with Henry's horses, often they improve for going chasing. He'd be one I'd be happy to give another chance to after his disappointment on a Punchestown. Definitely. Yeah,
very much so. I think Better Days Ahead is a fascinating one this season as well. I did say this at the time. This feels like a horse that's been essentially trained for the Martin Pipe all season. Did I properly follow my own advice? No, of course not. I got suckered into the old Quai De Bourbon thing, but the greater mind of Gavin Lynch was in my head, and I couldn't just trust my own opinion. And Gavin had a great Cheltenham, and he was banging in the winners left, right, and centre. And I held mad tough with Quai De Bourbon after telling everybody you should back Better Days Ahead, and then had to sit there and watch the gamble continue to develop on him as he went from 10s into 7s into 5s. So, yeah, great. But hey, well done. But their answer to KF is there as well, but they're 14 lengths clear of
yeah, I think it was a good race, wasn't it? Often isn't. I think last season's race was a good renewal.
14 3/4 lengths clear. The winner is of Ocastle de Motts, and there's only 2 lengths between Better Days Ahead, Waterford Whispers, and Quai De Bourbon. I suspect there are 3 very good horses who will have a good season, assuming they take defences. I'd be very, very keen on them. Of those 3, which one appeals to you more as the staying type?
From the Martin Pipe?
Yeah.
I think Quai De Bourbon will want a trip in time, but I think out and out Sterling Better Days Ahead has probably got the most stamina out of them 3.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Certainly, like Waterford Whispers was the way he raced last season. You wouldn't be rushing to push him up in trip at this stage unless he shows that he's matured over the summer and he starts to relax with racing. Yeah,
they all have to improve, but I think that improvement is there. Absolutely, I think it is. And just remember, it's the Martin Pipe. They weren't supposed to show you their full potential until that day. Anybody else in the staying division that you're very much looking forward to seeing?
A couple over this side. The Irishie Kerry Hill we haven't seen since he won Riverdon in late January for Ruth Jefferson. Met with a small setback, which meant he was forced to miss. He wasn't actually entered at Cheltenham. He was going to go to Aintree. But he met with a small setback, and hopefully he will go chasing for Ruth. He's still very lightly raced, but he was quite progressive, and he was pretty impressive when he won that race at Doncaster on better ground. He'd be one to note up in the north. And Butch, his horse, Ollie Murphy's always held in high regard. He was given that second season of hurdles last year and progressed throughout the season. He twice won at Cheltenham. He was actually a novice still till the end of November, so he was able to win a novice hurdle at the October meeting. And he won a handicap on heavy ground on New Year's Day. Slightly disappointed maybe behind Botox Haas when we seen him last in the Rendlesham hurdle, but he's a big horse who's always been regarded as a chaser. I'd expect him to have a good season in novice chasing. And I've got a couple of handicappers for novice handicaps.
Oh yes, please.
That I've been to as well. Do you want me to touch on a couple of horses?
Oh, absolutely. You've got a great record with these selections too.
I think if there's a division John Joe's going to do well in this season, it'd be novice chasers. Johnny Who, and in particular St. Davy, goes chasing over the trip. think St Davy's been crying out for a fence. Young John Joe said in the book that he would have gone chasing last year, but he was late back in. He obviously ended up winning £100,000 Sandown Handicap, so he didn't have a bad season. Slightly disappointing on his final start, but I'd expect him to develop into a smart staying chaser. And of course, some of the Megson horses who have left Ben Paulan's have now gone different ways. Teller the Name, who was pretty impressive on a couple of occasions at Huntingdon. He's now with John Joe, and whether he goes chasing or not, I'm not 100% sure. Could be that he goes for the Great Wood Hurdle, but if he goes chasing, he'd be one over a shorter trip. And then a couple more from Paul's last week. In the Waterside, again, he matured throughout last season. I think he had a big reputation. I was slightly disappointed with him at the start of last season, but his run at Aintree and that handicap at the end of the season was pretty good, considering he was on the front end throughout. I think he's got definitely the physical makeup to do well as a chaser. And Isaac Dozo Bow is probably below the top level of horses in Paul's Yard at the minute, but seems to be high hopes for him as a novice chaser. I think, again, he was quite an immature horse last year as a novice hurdler. He could be one for Chepstow early season. And as I say, then I've got 4 horses for novice handicaps for the start of the season who can slightly different than the Grade 1 horses who we've been talking about, if you want me to go through those.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we do, in the Waterside, it's quite extraordinary to see a Grade 1 winner ending up in a handicap hurdle, but that's how it worked in Django Bay, and he's second behind the very well-backed Dan Skelton horse Katira. But I just, as you were saying, I thought in the Waterside ran a blinder that day. Things didn't really go to plan with him last season, and sometimes just because a horse has a massive reputation doesn't mean they always are capable of living up to that. But
like I was at Aintree and he made his debut in that maiden hurdle, and he tanked Fiery Cobden. There was hurdles out, everything was against him, and he still just about managed to win. He was disappointing, admittedly, at Ascot. Got back on track at Lingfield. Then he gave Pickrock. He tried to give Pickrock £8 back at Ascot. Pickrock obviously advertised that form in the EBF final.
Yeah.
And as you say, first time Hood, I think that Aintree race was really strong. Katira had probably been aimed at the race, having had a midwinter break. She'd run well at Aintree the year before. And we know Dan's really good at target and handicap hurdles. Like you say, Django Bay was probably unlucky in the run. He was hampered badly 2 out, but he was a Grade 1 winner, really. So I think that's pretty strong handicap form. He starts the season on a mark of 132. Again, he could even run a decent novice handicap to begin with if necessary before developing. I would imagine that the hope would be that in the Waterside develops into a graded performer this year.
Yeah, I'd keep a very close eye on him. We'll have Ella back on the show soon to talk about the McNeil horses and her own thoughts on horses to follow for the new season. But I think he could be a real dangerous horse for the Paul Nicholls team this year. All right, your handicappers to follow.
There's a couple to begin with from Donald McCain's yard. A horse called Beneficially Yours. We only actually seen him 3 times over hurdles last year. He looked like he needed the run first time out of Carlisle, and he finished third behind a horse called Here Comes Georgie. He was a bit disappointing afterwards, but I was actually bounced back to form and won again yesterday. So, and then he had a break and he won twice in the autumn on deep ground at Newcastle. But he looks all over a staying chaser. He won his Irish point to point. He's only rated 120. He's definitely one to be with first time out in a novice handicap chase in the north. Looking at his form, you would assume, and he's by Milan and out of a beneficial mare, that he wants deep ground. But Brian was pretty adamant when we were doing the interviews for the book that even though his form figures look like he's a mudlark, he doesn't give him the feel at all and thinks he'll be fine on better ground. So that's Beneficially Yours. A grey horse called Gallon Gung, who's already actually won one novice chase. He won one in the spring at Perth. He's an 8-year-old and he's only had a couple of runs, so he's obviously been difficult to keep sound for Donald, but he won a banger handicap hurdle we sponsored that day and I was there. He took my eye, he won off a mark of 111, went up to Perth over 2 miles and won a novice handicap off 119. He only gone up another £5. He's definitely got another race or two in him before the handicapper catches him, I think. Handles soft ground, won't mind going back up in trip, starts the season on a mark of 124. So again, wouldn't actually surprise me if he was given an entry at Perth in a couple of weeks in the decent novice handicap chase there. I think it's the 25th or 26th. 26th, I think, the novice chases. I'd be interested to see if he gets an entry there over 2.5 miles. Sticking up north, Lucinda Russell looks to have a good team. One will be Primoz, who won a couple of times at Ayr last season, bookended the season with wins in a maiden hurdle early season. Won a handicap of 117 at the Scottish Grand National meeting. Starts a new campaign off a mark of 123. He finished second in a couple of Irish points. He's quite a keen going sort. He'll probably keep to 2 miles for now, but he should get 2.5 later in the season. And he looks a nice athletic sort. Looking at him physically again, I think he'll improve for the fence and for another summer behind him. So off a mark of 123 again, one to note in the north. And just one more, it's probably the lowest level we're going to talk about. A horse called Captain Wallace, trained by Sam Thomas. Now, he won twice in the spring in the space of a couple of days in handicap hurdles at Exeter off a mark of 85 and Southwell under a £7 penalty off 92. He's gone up to 107 now, but he looks all over a chaser to me, and he wants good ground. So again, he could be one who'd be out early in the season. He's obviously not going to be venturing into any of the races we've been talking about earlier in the programme, but just for a handicap chaser, I think off a mark of 107, Captain Wallace can definitely win again.
I like that. I like that a lot. Of the races we have talked about, is there an ante-post bet for Paul Ferguson?
No, I'm sorry to disappoint, but not at this stage in the novice chase division. For me, I think there's too many questions about important horses. Ballyburn, but if you think Ballyburn will stay hurdling, you might want to have a bet because he's favourite probably for he'd be favourite for the Arkle and the Turners, won't he, at the minute? Like you say, you think you'd lean. I'm guessing you'd lean towards Impaire Et Passe being your bet in the Turners, wouldn't you?
I've got a couple.
We've got horses like we don't know Majborough, but we don't know if he's going to go chasing. Gino, we don't know if he's going to go chasing. Irish Point, we probably should have touched him on actually because we touched him on him briefly when you were talking about the Arkle market. I'd like to see him go over fences now, and I'd like to see him campaigned in his own right rather than like a second string to Tihupu, because he's a good horse. Irish Point. He obviously come back and trip to run well in the Champion Hurdle. I think you can forgive his run in France. I think an intermediate trip's what he wants, and I think if he goes chasing, he'd be an interesting one over that kind of 2.4, 2.5 distance.
He could mop up those races if he takes defences. I think he's very, very interesting. And yeah, you would like to see him just actually, come on, Brian Atchison, put him over a fence and let's see what he can do. You've got the Stairs Hurdle winner anyway. You're going to win that race anyway. It's game over. Tihupu crushes everything again this season. Come on, doubters. Shove his price out. Give us a bigger price. That'd be fantastic. Thanks for tell us about how great that French horse is. He crushes him. I can tell you a horse who won't be winning. Grange Clare West is priced up for the National Hunt Chase by Sky Bet, those great supporters of racing, and Unibet. Can you see the problem with that? Do you know what the issue is there? Ridiculous nonsense.
Not a novice. One more I should touch on. I'm just scrolling down the market there. Sorry.
3-card brag.
No, another horse of not in the National Hunt Chase, just in general. Of Henry's Mossy Fen Park was also really liked last year.
Yeah.
And he went through the sales ring. I still don't know who the owners are. I think it was a new syndicate being put together. But he's looked like when you go back and watch his point to point, he was beaten first time out over 2.5. I think it was in a point to point. Then he stepped up to 3, and he just showed the benefits of it. And he just tanked, and he just looked all over a chaser. So he only won a maiden hurdle. I think he won it down Royal, didn't he, at Christmas time, Boxing Day, St. Stephen's Day, possibly.
Yeah, it was St. Stephen's Day, yeah.
Yeah, and he travelled like that, like he was going to go and win by 10, 12 lengths, and only just won. But I just think he was quite immature last year, and I think another summer behind his back, I think I would expect to see masses of improvement from Mossy Fen Park this year. He ran all right, actually, at Fairy House, didn't he, in a better race later on at the Easter Festival. So he's definitely one who could take, whether he's up to grade 1 level remains to be seen, but it's not all about Cheltenham, obviously, and I would expect him to take a massive jump from what we've seen so far to what we might see as a novice chaser and beyond.
I think 3-card brag will win the National Hunt Chase.
Experience.
Yep. Gordon Elliott, target trainer, loves the race, has the experience of being a novice chaser. Look at who he was beaten by. That's good form. That's very good form from last year. Monty Starr, Corbett's Cross. That's real good form.
He does he kind of has the profile for for a national and chase winner, certainly.
Yeah, I can't resist this because I'm an idiot. Paul's the smart one, so I will do a scumbag. Throw 15 quid away, lucky 15. 3-card brag for the national and chase, 12-1. Very keen on that. Super keen on Impaire Et Passe for the Turners. Thank you, 9-1. Thanks very much. And this is the one then that boosts it if we're right. Jeriko Du Reponet for the Arkle. 33-1. If he wins his beginner's chase, wins his first start over fences, he ain't 33-1 anymore. He's nowhere near that. He does need to improve, but I'd say that improvement is there. So there's my 3. There's my 3 to hopefully keep us warm over the winter. Paul, looking forward to talking to you again on the show very, very soon. We'll tackle... What do you want to do next? Do you want to do open company chasers or open company hurdlers?
I don't mind. If you want, we can we'll have a discussion in the week and get back on. Maybe one of them this year we could go for some dark horses instead and do something a little bit different. Maybe a few under the radar maidens or something. Or
I like that idea. If you like that idea, let us know in the YouTube comment section. If you're still here.
If you're still here and listening to me talk about horses rated 107 who've been winning around Exeter and Southall, let's be fair. The punters they want the winners first time out. That's the time to strike. October's the time. We don't need to be worrying all about Cheltenham in March.
Well, the second
beneficially yours of 120 in October is one you want.
The second you mentioned Donald McCain, my brain immediately went, "Oh, he's going to have a load of winners this year because he's going to have a load of well handicapped horses."
Hopefully, I haven't been over to Donald yet. I'll hopefully get over in the next couple of weeks. I haven't done any local ones actually. I need to get working on that. I needed a few days. I needed a few days at home after last week's travels down to the West Country. So I'll be back on the road soon. Yeah,
we forget just how in Ireland expensive and big the UK is, and it might be a 2-hour drive to Cork, but that's nothing compared to driving the length and breadth of the UK. Okay. Oh, no. There's lots to get stuck into. There's lots to be excited about, and I can't help myself but do that. It's probably a €1 patent, and a €1 patent is £7, tenner each way, treble. I'm doing that only because the patent is win only. I'm doing the each way treble because if Jeriko Du Reponet bumped into Ballyburn on the day and he gets sent off a 6-1 shot and gets chinned on the line, I'd peas and carrots all over the floor. You can secure your copy right now of the excellent Weatherby's Paul Ferguson jumpers to follow with Weatherby's right now. FFJTF2425 is your promo code. It gets you £3 off the print edition, the digital edition, or the print and digital bundle combined. That's the one I recommend. You have the book, but you also have the digital asset to hand. weatherbyshop.co.uk, weatherbyshop.ie. Secure your copy now and use the promo code FFJTF2425 for £3 off. The Final Furlong podcast is the only place where you will get £3 off your purchase of Paul Ferguson's excellent book. And remember, when you're placing your ante-post bets, take Geoff Banks' money at geoffbanks.bet using the promo code FFP500 and get yourself 10% back on any net losses up to £500 in your first month of betting. And hopefully, it won't be net losses. Hopefully, it'll be loads of money to be made. We had a great weekend preview, by the way. We're going to do that again for the Irish Champions weekend. There was a hatful of winners, including an 11-4 shot going off almost even money. Kalpana, 40-1. Arcadian Thunder was this close to winning, but got the each way money. And there was a good 6-1 winner in there. There's a 7-1 winner in there. Yeah, we did well. So hopefully we can keep that run of form going for Irish Champions weekend. From Paul Ferguson and from me, Emmet Kennedy, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you again very, very soon on the Final Furlong podcast. Look after yourself and each other. God bless. The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Geoff Banks Bet. Join the excitement and sign up to Geoff Banks online now to get 10% off any net losses returned as cash after your first month of betting up to £500 at geoffbanks.bet.